Oh, hello. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Welcome to the Passager poetry reading. It's a very chilly, windy day here in Baltimore. And I know we come from all over the country and all over the world, so I feel a need to share my weather with you. I'm sure you're all having your own weather where you are, but for us, it's our first real day of winter and a good day to listen to some poems. My name is Kendra Kapelke, and I am a co-editor of Passager, and I'll be hosting our reading today. I'd like to introduce the Passager editors, starting with Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Azriel, co-editor of Passager, and happy to see everyone here together.
Hey everyone, I am Christine Drawl, managing editor. Thank you for coming.
I am Roseanne Singer. I've met a number of you over email, and so good to see so many faces.
Hi, I'm John Shore. I produce the weekly Passager podcast, Burning Bright. It's 5 to 7 minutes a week of poetry, short fiction, and memoir by writers that have been published in Passager. You can get to the podcast, if you're not already on the list, by either going to the Passager website or by going to any of the podcast aggregators like Apple or Google or Spotify or any of those.
Thank you, John. I think you were frozen and on my screen. So I hope everyone could hear that John is the host of Burning Bright, which is our weekly podcast. And please, if you'd like to receive our weekly emails, sign up on the homepage of Passager, and we won't harass you. We will just inform you about the podcast and any events coming up, readings, calls for submissions, things that we think you would like to know. And we have found it to be a wonderful way to have just a little touch base, because we hear from you, little things that really like connection. That's been a nice outgrowth of the pandemic, the online world that we've entered. Passager, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a made-up word, and it combines passages with passenger. We made it up a very long time ago when we were much younger, thinking about how we were all together traveling on this road of life. And indeed, we've been on this road for a very long time with Passager, and we're always very happy to bring in new people with us. So we are a nonprofit. We've only been a nonprofit for a few years, and we rely on donations. If you like what we're up to, and we can't even begin to tell you how much we would appreciate some kind of donation from you. It's simple. You can go to our website and donate. You can use the mail and send in a check. Christine, I think we'll put that link on the chat. Do I see her in the chat? So while she's doing that, if you see the chat bar at the bottom of your screen, and you can click it and open the chat. And what we would love is for everybody just to jump in and say hi from wherever you are. And we're including the people in the audience as well as the people reading today. Feel free to share the weather where you are, as well as if you hear a poem that you want to say something about, just rush right in and post your comment on the chat. It's a nice silent way to have a communication, and we do love to read it after the reading. So let's get started. We're celebrating the poets the many poets whose work is included in this 2022 Passager Poetry Contest issue. We have 39 poets in the issue, and many of those poets are here today. We're just delighted that so many of you have joined in to read, and we can hear you in your own voice read your poem. But we're going to begin first with the remarkable artist who did the painting that we have incorporated that is on the cover of Passager. Alma Roberts, are you here? Can you tell us a little bit about the cover?
Yes, first let me thank you all for selecting me and my painting to be on your cover, and also to congratulate Mr. Bergman and all the other winners and that are featured in this edition. But the painting is entitled Indigenous, and it is in its entirety a salute to the Native American population in this country, and including Canada, because I've spent some time with First Nation folks in across Canada. The work is what I call a canvas quilt. It relates a number of aspects of the Native American culture and values that I have grown to admire and to know as much as I can from books and talking with individuals who are part of that population. So you see groupings of dots that are really a salute to the tribal communities and the bond, the strengths of those communities. And then the sun, the water, all of those natural resources that mean so much to that population. But in its entirety, it was meant to be a salute to this wonderful population of folks who've weathered all kinds of oppression, but still remained vibrant in their culture. And the colors that I feature here are drawn straight from fabrics and materials that I've seen in books and in stores and the like. So that piece, this particular painting, Indigenous, has been saluted by you all. It is currently on display in an exhibit at Morgan State University, where I'm the featured guest artist, and it is one of 4 of my paintings that are there. It was also featured at a holiday, last holiday season, at no other than Nordstrom's had a one-day exhibit. So it has garnered the attention I hoped it would when I painted it. And so I thank you all for recognizing it and for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be associated with a fabulous organization. For the better part of my life, I was in fact a literary artist, doing poetry and plays. And so for that, I'm happy to be associated with you. I'm also happy to be associated with you because of your mission of highlighting mature writers and giving them a voice. So thank you all so very much for all of this honor. And congratulations again to all your winners.
I have the delight of being the passenger poet for this year, and it came as a total surprise. I have to admit, I even forgot that I submitted the poems to the magazine. So it came as a particular joy. The first poem that I want to read needs an introduction. It is addressed to a friend of mine, James W. Gaynor, with whom I lost touch after college. But more than 40 years later, he reconnected with me, and at about the same time, he rediscovered a wonderful sequence of his own poems, which he had thought lost. They were written during the AIDS epidemic. When the poems were published as a book, he dedicated it to me. The book is titled, I'll Miss You Later, and this poem, an unrhymed sonnet, is titled Finding You Later. Finding You Later. Written under the pressure of terror and the urgency of death's elusive truths, these poems packed away for 40 years inside a spiral notebook you never thought would see the light are glowing in my hands. Evidence of the grace that terror gives are hastiest expressions and a music to which even the dead rise up and sing. Jim, I knew you before and after AIDS, not during, thankfully not during, for then we were too full of fear and grief to give each other anything more than silence. Thank you for keeping these words safe until I could see you as you now were then. Going on, the next poem is about the fluster of old age. And so it is filled with the flurry of allusions to Ovaltine, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the heroine of Puccini's opera La Boheme. But there is a reference to the one who watches, which may need explaining. It could be, and it probably is, a reference to God or one's parents, or even to the reader. But what I had in mind was a rather more obscure. It was to Simeon Solomon, the gay Jewish Victorian artist, and a drawing he did called Two Sleepers and the One Who Watches. Going on. It is a burden always to be beginning, especially at my age, when I am so far from the gate that beginning seems cruel, if not impossible. But I square my shoulders, lift up my backpack, and jump into whatever metaphor will take me. You'd think by now the first few lines would practically write themselves, but they don't. It's taken weeks to get even this far, which isn't far enough to satisfy the one who's always watching and who signals his boredom by covering his yawns with the backside of his hand. I say his because the watcher never provides a list of preferred pronouns and seems both nursemaid and jailer, a Mr. Chips who never says goodbye to Nurse Ratched, then their indifference a sort of lash made bearable only by the ready mug of Ovaltine waiting for when I finish the snowman who's already melting in the front lawn like a sandcastle battered by high tide and beyond repair or duplication. We are all chimney sweepers, our work coming to naught. Mimi enters breathless, frail, her flame snuffed out before a door she cannot open, all planned to end in her conspicuous consumption. The quicksand of beauty that will drag me down if I don't like the sprinter, push from the blocks and race blindly toward the watcher who stands to the side with his stopwatch, cheering. Waiting Entrance, the next poem, begins with a fairly common experience, being awakened by knocking and finding no one at the door when you open it. What I feel I should point to is the reference to at the end of the poem to the Old Testament God of hosts. During this time when we treat asylum seekers as criminals, we should remember that at the heart of the Judeo-Christian tradition is a God who welcomes those in need. Waiting Entrance. I wake in the middle of the night to the front door pounding. I run downstairs as fast as I can, which these days is not so fast. Still, I don't even bother to cover myself with a robe, for who knows, it might be my neighbor whose child's run off with a local hoodlum. Or maybe it's the cranky man across the street who, waking up to pee, finds on the kitchen floor the outstretched body of his wife or grandson. Or maybe it's a stranger trying to escape a knife-wielding madman. It's all possible. I've watched the local news. I've read the bulletins popping up in my smartphone. But when I finally open the door, there's no one there, nothing but a warm breeze pushing against my jockey shorts. Yet I'm far too jumpy to go back to bed. Say goodbye to sleep, David. You're stuck doing vigil now. Something has wanted you, and you have been slow to give it welcome. God of hosts, where do the unattended go? The things still waiting to be greeted and helped. Kindertotenlieder, which means Songs for Dead Children, is a song cycle by Gustav Mahler. But the most powerful influence on the poem was Dream Children by Charles Lamb. Like me, Charles Lamb had no children. Unlike me, he was tormented by their absence. Kindertotenlieder. We are the unfathered children of your brain. Do not fear us. We are not angry that you have not made us flesh. It is enough that we have been on your mind. Do not cry, Papa, for we are not sad. Your house is filled with your family. Your dogs, no longer alive, protect us still from danger. We have 18 acres to roam free and enough food to keep us always hungry. There is more music than we can ever hear from the crickets singing to the storms at night. Unlike you, we do not grow tired or older. The ones in diapers stay in diapers. Those old enough to learn by heart the multiplication tables ready themselves for the tests to come. And those like you, awkward, heavy, dim, who watch the dark for sights pretentious and incomprehensible, laugh as you rush out beneath the streetlights, for you will never leave us. You love us too much, and if you left, we would follow behind, a motley crew. Some who can only crawl, some who just have learned to ride their bikes, others so barely formed that big girls must carry them like the mothers they never had. And finally, I suffer from sleep disorder and have come aware of the cycles of sleep, the hypnagogic sleep we start off with, followed by alternating rhythms of REM sleep and non-REM sleep. And I've learned that the best sleep is the last sleep. But only in the process of writing this poem did I realize that the last sleep could also be a reference to death. Of sleep's many episodes, the last one is the best, the one that brings refreshment, if refreshment comes at all. It does not pull me down into the dark depths of dreams, where eyeless fish make their hobbled way, where I painfully break into wakefulness and effort. Unlike sleep's earlier episodes, the last one does not insist that I relive the final exam for the class I never attended, or defend myself against the enemy who's found my hiding place. No, the last sleep is the best sleep because it wraps me in dreams through whose thin walls I hear the unmelodious rattle of the day and feel like a leaf the dawn's swift occupation of the sky. Thank you very much. What remains for me to do is to welcome Margaret Lloyd, the next reader.
Thank you. Well, first, I want to congratulate David Bergman on winning the 2022 Passager Prize. Clearly, beautiful poems, really well-deserved honor. I'm going to be reading a poem called This Moment, and I actually remember the moment that I began the first draft of this poem, which is kind of unusual, but it was in this very room. I was sitting in front of the fireplace. The fire was roaring in there. It was winter, and I was in an armchair, and I had my black leather boots on. And as we often do when we're staring into a fire, some reverie might come on, some thoughts. And I began thinking about the fact that I'm a Welsh immigrant and came to this country on the Britannic back in 1948. And I began thinking about that, and about those thoughts brought me to think about mortality. This moment. I open my eyes and know I am what remains. The tree in the garden after a storm, covered with pearls glistening in the sun in the dead of winter. Always, the large ship is sailing toward this country, carrying me, my father, mother, brother, and I am what is left. The others all in the ground, the air full of spirit, scattered snow on the grass. The wood in the fire pit waiting to be burned, the leather of a boot shaped by my foot, this work of time on me. Our next reader is Liz Abrams-Marley.
Thank you, Margaret. And I wanted to also just add to this that when I opened this edition of Passager, yours was it's right at the beginning, but it was also the first thing I read and really needed that day. So thank you. This past 5 or 6 years have really strained my sense of myself as a hopeful pragmatist, both as an artist and as an activist. And so I would say this poem that I'm about to read was written to remind myself as much as to declare to the world that that there are great moments of sweetness, and staying in them is an important way of getting through all of the ups and downs of the rest of it. In this poem, the title becomes the first line. This is "Write your hope for the new year," you say, and Dave says, it will be marginally better than the last, which he admits is like saying slightly less evil than Hitler. But Corey says a new moon as new year opens could mean possibilities, which could go, given human nature and humans and nature, either way these days. And you may call me crazy, writing letters to the editor when nobody reads newsprint anymore, or for yelling myself hoarse at the walls behind which my senator hides every mild or inclement Tuesday. I'll still knock on doors, ranting like Chicken Little when we all know the sky is ripped open, if not falling, and possibly it's all beyond repair. But listen, my grandson is teaching himself, fly, eagles, fly, on his shiny new trumpet. Outside, on a cold December Wednesday, I'm standing in a city schoolyard while my granddaughter's second grade sings to shivering parents who want only the world for their children, proud smiles hidden behind KN95s, and I'm here, recalling how long after her own illegal but safe abortion, long after her own menopause, my mother, newly a grandmother, escorted terrified girls past a red-faced mob and into a clean, warm clinic. I'm seeing my father at 70, marching in an anti-nuclear protest for the first time. Call me crazy for hope. I'm just Sarah Blossom's grandma. I'll tell you, I'm just Bill's third determined girl. I guess I'm just Esther's most stubborn child. And our next reader is, I'm pleased to introduce Constance Norgren, if she's here. Okay, and if not, I am thrilled to pass the baton on to Gil Arzola.
Good afternoon. My poem is entitled Living Will. I think it's relatively self-explanatory. What a mess we've become, as unkept as a basement closet, as wrinkled as shirts shoved beneath beds. Old age has found us like rabbits huddled under a porch. I become like morning fog lifting over bean fields. But listen to me. I want no stainless steel machines, no plastic tubes to squeeze the last drops of life from me. I want no tug of war with death. All my life, God had nothing to say to me. I could not find him. I will not look for him now, asking for favors. I'll drink my death like warm tea. I'll say to life, thank you for having me. Grab my coat and say goodbye. The next poet is Martha Fox.
Thank you. This poem spins off a headline from Pew Research Center that read, Nuns on the Rise. The spelling is important. That's N-O-N-E-S. It seems that a fifth of the United States population responded to a religious affiliation survey by checking the box for nun, which is not at all to say non-spiritual. Well, all of that resonated with me, and so along came this poem for the nuns. Of all the assurances intoned in liturgy, the most excessive is, we shall never hope in vain. Contrast that to this, the glimmer of a tiny koi in the black pupil of a pond, surrounded by a snowdrift. Spring will come. Summer is a coming in one of these days. Then falls lustrous letting go, lull of winter, and the lions and lambs of March again. So let's bundle storm twigs from our dormant yards and keep our eyes open for arrowheads of snowdrops, artifacts of some ancient's wish, poking through a patch of slush. We can trust hope in the garden. Julie Pratt.
Hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be here today with all these wonderful poets, and also very grateful to all the Passager staff who made this event happen. I'm joining you from Charleston, West Virginia, where I've lived for 30 years. And this poem was inspired by my parents. It's called The Cranes. Just past dawn, they glided through the fog that rested like pillows on the still lake. My father watched as the pair of cranes descended toward the grass he cut the day before, dew-covered and shimmering. When it seemed almost too late, they pulled up in tandem just enough to lower their legs, the delicate spindles with claws, touching, bouncing, then settling. But wait, only 3 claws, for one was missing half a leg. The birds foraged in the grass as the man sat with his coffee, a kind of meditation, forecasting a day that would start by gently waking his wife, raising the back of her hospital bed, and placing pills and orange juice on her tray. For the next 2 years, the two couples shared this shore, living the daily rhythm of an unhurried life. Many an evening, the man pushed his wife's wheelchair onto the dock as the sun sank crimson over the lake. In the 3rd year, my father watched the sunsets alone. He sought comfort in his visits from the cranes, who, like him, mated for life. Then, one morning, a single bird appeared. He wept when the crane landed, wobbled, then steadied himself on one leg. Our next reader is Lynette Partlow Myrick.
Thank you, Julie, for that beautiful poem. I was born into a family of very loving grandparents, parents, of course, grandparents, great-grandparents, and dozens of wonderful aunts and uncles. And I started this poem years ago in a fit of grief. So many passing. Now on my father's side, there are only 2 of us. I am the matriarchal elder. And on my mother's side, there is 1 uncle and 1 aunt. I am an elder in waiting. And so this poem titled Family Visits with an Elder is a love offering to all of those ancestors and the 2 who are still with me. No one dares tell Uncle Jay it's 2022 and all his warped, mildewed Al Green albums are old. Cousin Babe and I argue over what came first, the record player or the records, Uncle Jay or the house. It's all old. Old wood, old walls, old air, wisps of Auntie Lou's fleur de fleur perfume flitter through Uncle Jay's recall. Those parties and cookouts we had. Babe and I remember their harmony, those hoarse and tender songs they sang so sweetly out loud. Ooh, baby, let's stay together. No one has the heart to ask Uncle Jay why he keeps her framed picture on the broken record player in a corner where he never dusts. Next up is Gabrielle LeMay.
Thank you. Hi. My poem Night Train really came directly out of my subconscious. One night, I woke up to the sound of a train going up the side of town here in Oxnard, California. There's a lot of freight and passenger trains here. And the sound reminds me of my whole life, childhood through 77, because I've taken the train across country from New York to California and back many times. And it informed my life, as did the fact that my mother lived in New York and my father lived in California. So one night here, I woke up here in a train and I just had to get up and start writing a poem. And it went in a direction I wasn't expecting it to. And throughout it, it plays with memory that changes as the mind moves from one part of your life to the other. So here we go. Night Train. I need my glasses. Here we go. I've dozed off with the little bedside lamp on again. Brahms turned down so low, a late train clacketing and moaning up the east side of town has broken through. I love that sound. I've traveled alone by cross-country train, almost 70,000 miles so far, hurtling across Midwestern flatlands in the dark, leaving big eastern cities far behind. The quaking concatenation of sleeping cars, rocking and shaking so fast and hard. It's a circus trick to get to the after-hours diner for a Coke, some crackers, a bit of flirting with the porter. 2 a.m., The noise in the train is deafening. The Coke has flooded the pull down. Cracker crumbs are everywhere. I fall back asleep, dream of horses. I wake to sun-spattered foothills, rolling swaths of meadowlands, canyons so deep I can't look. Up ahead, a long tunnel through a mountain. To the left, an upslope clad in pines. Way down to the right, a fleeing manada of party-colored Mustangs kicking up so much dust they can hide in it. I own the memories of all of this. Moffat Tunnel, Feather River, Book Cliffs, the sulfurous aura of Great Salt Lake, the hoot of the train races like a flame through the night. The engineer hunches forward, stares down tracks that never change. They stretch into infinity, which is where we're all headed. Through every moment of whatever is left of our lives, perhaps some of us forever reaching for the controls, but most of us merely huddling together as the light fades, holding hands. And I pass on to the next reader, Margaret Flaherty.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be a part of this 2022 Passager contest reading with all these wonderful poets. I am the sort of person who will try just about anything once. And a few years ago, I tried Tibetan bells, which is a kind of massage where the masseuse puts bells on your skin and strikes them gently in a particular order. And the vibration, a musical vibration, courses through your body. And it's a very soothing experience until she put the bells on my head. And at that point, it changed into something a little bit unsettling, a journey into a past that didn't feel at all past. Nanny's hat. Struck Tibetan bells on my skin make waves, widening swells, centers dark welled. Down, down I slip the black slicked sides to the time before anyone died. This cannot be. The past is nada, zero. No space for falling, no place to land. All I can say, I was there. I saw what I saw. The hat boutique and Nanny angling her face in the mirror. Blue netted hat, brimming silk flowers, pinned to her iron gray curls. She looks like she's tasting something sweet, but knows how to keep it a secret. It's possible she loves me. For sure, she loves a white straw hat with navy grosgrain trim. A pillbox, I think they called it. The hat that Jackie made famous. On dark hair like mine, and Nanny's once was, it's glamour. In this great country, she says, even the poor can dress rich. Proud to be such patriots, we buy the hats. This is where the bells took me. It wasn't a memory. It was an actual place. And I was happy to be there again. And I think though she didn't smile or say much. Nanny was glad to see me. And now I pass the baton to Linda Joy Burke.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Passager editorial staff for this wonderful issue of Passager. It was great to see Kendra. I think I just saw you somewhere out there. And it's lovely to hear everybody reading and to read your poems. I am a boomer, and I moved to the city that I live, Columbia, Maryland, when I was 17 years old as an emancipated minor. And people were still hitchhiking across America. Actually, I was at the tail end of when people were freely hitchhiking across America. And I got it into my head that it would be a good idea for me to hitchhike from Columbia, Maryland, without a map or a weapon or any food or any clue, to Provincetown, Massachusetts, because it was a cool place to go. Never been there, didn't know anybody there. I went via from Columbia, Maryland, south to Washington, D.C. through the women's community. From there, I went to New York City for some reason through the women's community, thinking that I would get a map or something. Someone would help me. I think I may have slept on someone's couch. Then I wound up going up the coast, getting to Provincetown. I got botulism on the way. It was an interesting experience. So that was one of the things that marked my memory and resulted in this poem, 18. 18. Still young enough to believe the world was an elegant egg to crack open. A gift that couldn't be diminished by an indolent argument, vacant stares, bugs in the machinery. Still young enough to believe in impromptu rapture, love is all you need, flower power, passion capsizing the way it used to be. Still young enough to forget to render a route while fearlessly hitchhiking up the coast to Cape Cod to touch the ocean. Still young enough to believe in the kindness of strangers and fearlessly settle on a stool at a truck stop counter in a town whose name is a long-lost memory. Still young enough at first to be diminutive, to go unnoticed, then boisterous. Still young enough to use the well-polished art of sizing up the best who for the next leg of the trip. Still young enough to believe that delicate was not in my DNA. And with that, thank you. And I want to introduce our next reader, Laura Gamache.
Thank you, Linda Joy. Oh man, I hitchhiked too. Not talking about it. So what I'm going to read, and thank you, everybody. This is really a treat. I'm really grateful to be published in this gorgeous edition and to be reading with all of you. It's really wonderful. So my poem is dedicated to a woman I knew as an 8th grade language arts teacher, but she told me this story about when she was a grad student at the University of Washington in the early 50s, when Dylan Thomas came to Seattle to read at the UW's Parrington Hall. Like everybody, she was excited to meet him. My poem is called Walking the Ave with Dylan Thomas, for Evelyn Valentine. She pulled him from bars, cajoled him out of dives between bookstores and cafes. They must have hit the Blue Moon west of the U, haunt of Carolyn Kaiser, Hugo, Retke, David Wagoner, all regulars. Her professor had chosen her to tour Dylan Thomas around the neighborhood, shepherd him to his evening reading. Dylan Thomas, more drunk than barred as the day ground down, got away from her. Under 5 feet tall, she near carried him through obstinance and terror onto campus, into Parrington Hall, to the foot of the stage. He heard his name and applause, rose to the mic, sent his poems in that Welsh singing voice into the grateful air. And our next poet is Todd Williams.
Hello, and good evening. I am reading tonight from Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. This is where I work. I'll be reading My Pandemic Face, which is a lot less about the pandemic because during the pandemic, we were pretty much sequestered here for about 2 years. Couldn't get home to see family, both my kids back in the US. But more about the time kind of after the pandemic, maybe the time that we're in now still, kind of the difficulty and kind of reintegrating into this quote unquote new normal. My pandemic face. In seasons of pandemic, my beard grows, a face unfamiliar. Smiles once broad breaking in the bramble. With clipped lips, short words become strangely snarled by simple things. Kind greetings, days fleeting, and so much less talk about the weather. Cheeks made rosy by holiday cheer disappear below the prickly present, an unkempt patchwork of the old and the new, no normal to be found amid the razor's rust. Soon I may sweep away this salt and pepper contour for more boyish charms, but for now, blades stay sheathed as we wait for better days. Every calendar square countdown whispered. Every hour a gift not given until we're whole once more. And now up as our next reader is Ray Copson.
Thank you, Todd. I'm reading from Reston, Virginia today. We have 3 grandchildren, and we constantly worry about the world we're leaving to them. We worry about climate change, of course, threats to democracy. But there was one threat that we faced as younger people, the threat of nuclear war, that seemed to have faded away. But now with the war in Ukraine and Russia testing new superfast hypersonic missiles, one of which is called Zircon, and reports of new activity by nuclear-armed Russian submarines in the Atlantic, we realize now that the nuclear threat is back with us, and we do have to worry about it. This poem opens with a quotation from a newspaper article that appeared in the New York Times in January, which frightened me and inspired the poem. Zircon. There were hints, never quite spelled out, that nuclear weapons could be shifted to places perhaps not far from the United States coastline, that would reduce warning times after a launch to as little as 5 minutes, potentially igniting a confrontation with echoes of the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. They stick in the mind, those hints, never quite spelled out, hints of a dark shape, slithering the not far deep, bearing potentially my sudden death and the death of all I love. I switch to the post and for distraction, read the letters to Miss Manners concerning guest towels. I click on a comic, then check my mail. Yet still, The dark shape slithers. I face the latest news on mask debates, school board meetings, threats to voting rights. Where did all this anger come from? Not that the dark shape cares. I recall the missile crisis. I've lived with hints before. They slept a while, but with hypersonic zircon and Ukraine awaken. The dark shape awaits the command. This morning, we drove the boy to Montessori. He imagined the car was a school bus and called the roll of all the children in his class. The dark shape circles back. And now our next poet is Willa Schneeberg.
Thanks, Ray. Delighted to be here with everyone to celebrate poetry. The Iron Lung is the title of the poem I'm going to read, and it's inspired by my uncle Bud, who had polio a very short time before the salt vaccine was invented. I often write the persona poem, and this is in the voice of my aunt. And this poem is also going to be included in a forthcoming collection in January entitled The Naked Room. Iron Lung. If he could stand up, he'd look like a spaceman in comics, his head sticking out a portal. But my husband, who never spent a night not holding me, except when he was deployed, cannot. He's stricken. He puckers his lips to kiss me. I bend over, my lips barely graze his. I want to coat his face with wet kisses, not in front of the other wives or their men, each in his own metal tank. Dr. Sol's vaccine talk means nothing. Will the only man I ever loved be able to ravish me? When I give Sadie the robin's egg blue blanket with the frayed satin trim and her stuffed mohair deer, the crying stops. But during some visit so deep in myself, her fussing doesn't register. Everyone tries to comfort me. He will breathe on his own, but not, he'll walk again. I won't leave his side. Attendants pull me and the other bereft brides off our broken men. Nurses force us to walk back to our apartments with shiny appliances that give no comfort. I'm expecting. Sadie rubs my tummy and pleads, no baby, puppy. The next reader will be Marjorie Schratz McNamara.
I'm from Burlington, North Carolina, and this seems to go with Raymond, your poem a bit. My father was a submariner, but it was in the good days after the Korean War when he made this incredible trip in his submarine and still holds the world record. And it got splashed across newspapers all through the world because they were looking for some really good news. And this is a happy thing that happened. But I didn't find out about it because my parents never talked about, the past and the war and anything else. So when we visited my daughter up in Philadelphia, they have a twin to my father's sub that's there in the harbor, and we went through it. And then I could really understand a little bit of what he went through. Not until I got into that sub could I kind of feel what it was like to be there. So So the poem is called A Tourist in a Guppy Submarine. The guppy submarines were the little ones that had a snorkel. And that's all they breathed through. All the air came through that. And okay, I was the tourist. All right, here we go. Tourist in a guppy submarine. Dad's sub was a twin to this one. Constructed in the heat of war, launched as hunches with men inside. My few stories, none from him, skeleton this reality, as I stick in the first hatch and call for a hand to pull me through. A cork popped from a bottle into the belly of the sub. Belly too round, a word for this crouch space, covered with slithers of cables and gauges running fore and aft with few labels. Spaces for working forced in underneath, like living in a computer chip. I recall a picture of him in a wardrobe, in a wardroom with his officers, porthole in the wall behind him. But of course, there are no portholes, no peek outs in a sub, no outside rescues in mechanical failures, each man a jury rigger in an emergency. What was Dad thinking when the wars ended in '52? His last trip home, when he dove the pickerel in Hong Kong and did not surface until Pearl Harbor. All odds on not making it with only the snorkel for air. Radio contact lost, deck plates popping off, families tense with no word coming in. A grand entrance, crew in dress whites with 21-day beards, 5,000 miles submerged, done. A world record. The last gasp of the guppies before nuclear took over. Thanks.
Should I just
I got it.
introduce
I got it.
myself?
It's James Zimmerman, and I'm supposed to introduce you, and I muted myself. So there you go, because you're kind of in line with what I am, right? We belong together. All right. Okay.
First, just a pleasure to be reading with all of you. Some wonderful work, and also to thank all of the Passager folks who have been supportive of my writing for, I think it's almost 10 years, including the book that you published in 2015, I think, Little Miracles. It's been a little miracle to be associated with you all this time. This poem is based on an event that happened that altered the path of my father's life dramatically. And this was before I was born. It created a generational trauma in the family, and perhaps an epigenetic alteration in the family gene pool. Is called D-Day. My father was not allowed to kill. His feet too flat, they said, to face the bullets, the mortars, to die on the beach, to have his legs blown off, his mind torn open. Not allowed the chance to save a nation's soul or his own. He lived through his war in Lake Charles, Louisiana, teaching pilots to escape from drowning fighters. They called them flying coffins. And to keep himself from drowning, he carried home the song of Zydeco and the smell of shrimp étouffée, star and bar on his shoulders, officer's certificate from Yale, chest full of pride when the war was over. To the bodies of both his parents, crushed by a careening Packard, his mind torn open, his war never to end. The next poet is John Romagna.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My poem was inspired by a couple things. I've admired the poetry of William Butler Yeats since high school. He's one of my favorite poets until today. I have 25 or 30 other favorites as of now. I've enjoyed this reading very much. And it was also inspired by my son, Tim. It's called Variation on a Poem by Yeats. For Tim Ramania. Who believes the falconer controls the falcon the way some force, maybe a god, keeps this earth gliding in a long ellipse, a solar system, keeps a universe at its surface, expanding into what I can only call nothing. Yeats didn't think so. After such a war, 20 million dead, many more with broken faces, hands, legs in a pile, like empty bullet shells next to hospital beds. Did I, for a moment, the morning I put my head down on your chest, hoping it would lift me, hoping to hear you breathe. You had a body. You must be there. This should be like nudging your shoulder, waking you for school. I should see you raising a hand, whispering, okay. Turning over as I leave the room to let you sleep 10 minutes longer. You'll get there on time. And I'm proud to introduce the next poet, Joel Savashinsky.
Thank you, John, Kendra, and all the editors, and all you beautiful poets and readers. I'm speaking to you from Seattle, Washington. About 10 years ago, I uprooted my life in upstate New York and moved to the Pacific Northwest. I wanted to be near my adult sons and help raise my 5 grandchildren. My wife and I often took the children to walk and play on the beautiful beaches along the shores of Puget Sound. This poem comes out of those experiences, both the wonder and the despair they occasioned. The title is High Tide, the rack line at Lincoln Park Beach, Puget Sound. The rack line refers to the material left on a beach after the high tide has retreated. Here's what we've given the world and what its broken heart pumps back to our shores. The bright bauble of plastic floats, the birds strangled in nylon string, lionfish and small shards from the sand's smooth glass of neglect. My grandchildren pick through the ocean's insults and offerings without distinction, indifferent to the fault line between art and artifice. They have not reached the age of discrimination or despair. The storyline of the rack line, high tide's seaweed weave of garbage and wreckage, is the tight sheath wrapped around the clogged vessels of my own broken heart. Thank you. I'm delighted to introduce our next reader, Nancy Jean Hill.
Hello, everyone. It's been a real pleasure to listen to all this poetry. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with a severe form of macular degeneration that has no cure, and listening to poetry is one of my greatest joys. So thank you very much for all your poetry. I'm reading from Exeter, New Hampshire, and the idea for this poem was inspired by my first experience snorkeling. However, no surprise to the writer, no surprise to the reader, right? And as I worked on the poem, my imagination moved me to take unexpected leaps, causing the poem to go places I had not anticipated. Okay. Snorkeling. When I die, I want my head with all its poems dispersed among the albacore, the best one caught by a hot fisherman and brought home to his fat wife, who will rave for years about the scrumptiousness of my verse, the sweet internal rhyme that pleased her. I want my arms and legs speared by sailfish, carried off at high speeds, finally taken by a proud gamesman with hungry children who will eat the meat to fill their empty bellies, though it is hard to chew and the flavor too strong. My liver, loyal despite abuse, shall belong to yellowtail snapper, swift swimming golden fish, hooked on her way to dinner by a ruddy-faced, hard-drinking man who plays 5-card stud every Saturday night with the other local drunks, who hee-haw about sexy women and the good old days. Gallbladder, pancreas, good-for-nothing appendix, stomach, colon, all my guts should be divided among fishes of deep waters. Blue marlin, wahoo, mahi-mahi, delicate, white-fleshed, delicious fishes, strong, strong, iridescent fishes, fishes that scour the bottom of the sea, best served in a sweet and sour sauce and on an heirloom platter. I want the hands that trace the lines around my former husband's eyes to find the belly of a serial killer, great hunter, barracuda, tiger of the sea, eating machine, the fate of my age-spotted, wanton hands. And my heart, it will go to the sharks. Let them fight over it. No one has ever fought over it before. They will relish the battle. They will find it worthy. It is a tender, delectable heart. And our next reader is Leslie Gable Brett.
Hello. I'm reading from West Hartford, Connecticut, and I have really enjoyed this program so much. The poems have really been so varied and so beautiful, so thank you very much. My poem addresses the tensions between grand optimism and the realities of our daily lives. And I find, even though I wrote it some time ago, I find it very meaningful right now in this season of working for democracy and working against climate change and the things that ordinary people are doing in those efforts. The poem is called What is Possible? What, after all, is possible? We have no gills. Our narrow arms are not wings. Our necks do not reach the tops of trees. Later, I may dream, but now I am thinking about gravity, aging, ice freezing on the lock, pockets to hold things. Make note of the facts about work, babies, cruelty, all the neighbors in a town who have not met until the night they stand together in the rain, sacks of sand passed hand to hold the river back. I am contented by this question that I chant like a prayer, seeing words before me wash out like the ocean and return again with the tide. I am finished with yearning. Thank you. And I'm pleased to introduce our next poet, Mary Pagen Michna.
Okay. I am grateful to be a part of this Passager group, and I am reading from Valparaiso, Indiana. There are moments that stay with us for whatever reason. They fill us in like a prayer or a happy memory. When we call them back, they fill us again and again. This poem is one in a collection that celebrates those sacred moments. And so I share with you a November morning some 30 years ago. The poem is entitled Joy. The field lay barren, erased to an empty page, under a pale blue morning sky and warming sun. And I, a gatherer of loose ends, errant comma, misspelled name, widow word on a line alone, traveled to the madness of newsroom. I see the black dog writing his story, punctuating the day with delight, running, leaping, spinning in soil turned by plow. He dances in the rubble of brown broken stalks, scatters gold kernels of corn, a feast for crows. I pull my car off the road for a moment in a lifetime. I fill myself with the joy of that black dog. And now I am pleased to introduce our last poet, Susan Walton.
Thank you very much, Mary, for your beautiful poem. And I'm in fact the penultimate poet. So thank you. What a rainbow this has been, feeling hints of the depths of poets' lives as each has read aloud. Lovely, lively poems. I'm so grateful to the Passager editors and staff, and it is an honor to join this launch. Wrapped in Alma Roberts' gorgeous quilt of a cover. I'm Susan Walton from Denver, Colorado. A year ago, I moved from the Northeast to the Rockies at 75. Gardening has helped me to put down new roots and to feel the stirrings of the world. My poem is called Earth Day. Earth Day, 4/22/22. Mother Earth pushed up a row of arugula sprouts from seeds planted last week in this mile-high garden, despite historic drought and smog, which hides the Rockies. The bees and I keep watch, find forget-me-nots, pansies, bleeding hearts, hellebores, something new each day. Nearly 6,000 miles east, yet on my screen every night, lie Kyiv and the Dnieper Valley under bitter bombardment. Farmers quickly fill in craters to plow and plant their fields. They double now as militia, report enemy action by video, determined to plant wheat and sunflowers as before. Now horizons fill with flames and smoke from months of attack. Their neighbors show no concern for globe or life. A photo from my news feed paints a new icon for hope. Ukrainian bride in camo with rifle, crowned with white roses. Her groom in uniform too, pledging troth to the future. And now I would like to happily introduce Constance Norgren.
Current reading. Great chunks sliding from Earth's edges into the sea. Young men pulling on their hoodies. Emily dying in a book. Higginson visited only twice, wrote afterwards, I did not think she would die. Trayvon's eyes alive in photographs only. Water sold away, even the billion-year-old rocks helpless in the face of. So many lined up along Earth's curve, waving, wishing it good luck, goodbye. Emily pinpointing her day-to-day, sewing it into little books, hardly able to bear it. Thank you.
So is that all the readers for today? Yes, I think so. Oh my gosh, that was really, really remarkable reading. I'm sure I speak for many of you. And that last line, Constance, to bear it as if to bear it. Yeah, it is the news of the day. Poetry has always been the news of the day. And I just thank you on behalf of everyone at Passager. Thank you all so much. To hear your voices and behind the words and inside the words is like nothing else, I'm sure. Bringing it alive in a very different way. It's a very different kind of experience, and it's another experience. So we're so honored to have all of you as part of us, and thank you for joining us today. We have, if anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment, you can be unmuted, or those of you that are not one of the writers, if you'd like to ask a question on the chat, please do so. I have a question to everybody. How'd you write those poems? I mean, they just come from everywhere, everywhere. And they look so inevitable when you hear them. They seem so inevitable, like they have to be here, and they are here now. It just feels, I'm sure, like a miracle sometimes when they happen.
This is Marjorie McNamara, okay? I was wondering, this is the first time I've been on a Zoom with you all. Is this, how long have you been doing this Zoom? Is this the first time or what? No. It's my first time to be published by you, so I don't know.
This is our, well, we did our first Zoom during the pandemic.
Okay.
And it was a book launch for our Morgenthau winner. And then we have since then, that was probably in 2020, we've done one every time the journal has come out.
Okay.
As much as we can manage it, learning as we go, and then forgetting between each Zoom as we go. So meeting everybody, I think, has been for us just part of the real joy of publishing, because publishing, you don't necessarily meet the writers.
Right.
You meet them, you meet the writers through their work, which we love. We love that that way to begin a conversation. But then actually meeting you on the screen is remarkable.
I really like your suggestion for the biography, saying something about your connection to your poem and what inspired you. And there's the biographies I've always written have been just this long list of things I've always read. And that's much more interesting to read where you're coming from. So thank you for that. I think that's really good.
We love the cover letters, now that people introduce themselves to us, rather than telling us where they work or where they've been published. That's just a piece of who they are. So we really meet them, and we love that.
No, me too.
We're interested in the person, we're interested in the community. We're interested in all of you getting to know each other. This is a whole, all the work we're doing, we think we can do it better if we're together. All the poems you're writing and the things you're thinking about, we feel like we can make more of a difference if we're together, even though our writing is so solitary.
And the picture helps that as well, having the picture. So both those two differences, I think, are important differences in what you do and what other journals do. Thank you.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the pandemic, when we realized we couldn't do live readings, we were disappointed. And then we realized that with the Zoom reading, you don't all have to be in Baltimore, Philadelphia, or wherever the reading happens to be. So whatever we lost from live, we certainly gained and then some in the diversity and the geographic diversity of seeing and hearing you all.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that I have a hearing loss, and Zoom has been wonderful for me because I can always hear everybody. Whereas in a room, I might not be able to, especially people, talk like this or whisper. So that's kind of been a great thing. And I just want to also add my appreciation to the editors of Passager and everyone who's worked on it. Because I think that we need poetry more than ever. And this was just such a fine group of poems that you put together. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I will say, having read so much, on the page, and thought so much about this issue, that to see you all and hear your voices together was it made me feel so grounded in the time that we're living through. I never quite felt it this way. Because you're everywhere and you're saying things that need to be said that I could never have said, and you're saying them to each other. It was beautiful. It really was. It was just wonderful. So thank you.
I'd like to add to that. I only started writing poetry fairly recently, and Passager is the first place that accepted a poem of mine. And when I read all the other poems in the issue, I thought, holy cow, what a great way to start. I'm so impressed with myself and everyone else.
That's great.
Mary.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll raise my hand. I'm sorry. I should have raised my hand. I wanted to just piggyback on what you said, Marian. It's great to see you. I haven't seen many people since before the pandemic, and I know I haven't seen you in quite a while, so it's good to see you.
Yeah.
Yes. But I wanted to piggyback onto what you said in terms of we have people, and our brother over there in Saudi Arabia, if all of us, I'm sorry, I'm being nervous. I'm going to get it together. What I'm understanding about this Passager is, for all of us who are older now, who have seen our world shift in such dramatic ways, both with the climate and the environment and the politics of things, both in our country and across the world. It's even more important and powerful that we are using our poetry to catalog and bear witness to all of this. And it's an interesting passage for me, because I'm thinking, people are dying. We're going through grief. A lot of us are experiencing grief and loss of place, loss of memory of place. And so all of these different voices coming together and highlighting from those places what will be lost in the next 20 years or 30 years. Our poems, our memory, our national memory. I'm so moved by it, and I didn't get it when I was a bit younger. I was published in Passager many years ago, but I didn't get the significance of it then as much as I do now. And that whatever work that we do as older writers, whatever observations that we say, whatever knowledge that we're trying to pass on is crucially important, because life as we know it in the 21st century has changed so much than what we knew from the 20th century. So it's a privilege and a pleasure, and I'm filled with all kinds of emotions. I have grief, I have hope. What is it? Someone said they were hopeful. They're hopeful pragmatists. Holding on to that hopeful pragmatism is crucial in this next passage that we're in. So that's my speaking, and I'm so grateful to be in this arena with the rest of you.
What I wanted to just add quickly really follows, I think, appropriately, Linda, from what you were just saying. I think we're all living through a time in our society where the predominant emotions seem to be anger and rage. And listening to all of you read today is an important reminder and an affirmation of the fact that human beings carry around inside of them just an enormous spectrum of feelings that really need expression. Love, hope, regret, longing, gratitude, dedication. I mean, those are just some of the takeaways from what people read. And I think we all owe a word of thanks to one another, for reiterating and, featuring those kinds of feelings in the poems that we shared with one another. So thank you very much for that.
Just one sentence. I was mispronouncing the name of your magazine, so it's a good thing we had a Zoom up here. I was saying Passager.
Oh.
I did it in French.
You're not alone in that, making that error.
I don't know why we came up with that name. We were sitting in the backyard in Dickeyville, making up names for the journal, and we thought that was perfect. But all we did was run into the problem of the French word.
Yeah.
Which we knew that at the time, but we did it anyway. So there you go. That's our word. That is our word. We're all passengers.
Well, we still hope it'll get to be a word in the language and nobody will have trouble with it anymore, right?
But it is, I mean, it really is a journal with a mission. And I think that's what's, it's not simply about high quality writing. It's really about this thinking we're all collectively doing, artistically, creatively responding to where we are as older artists and writers, and making a place for it that's powerful and beautiful. And it's just so important to us at Passager. We don't even know what to call older people, for example. There's so much kind of ageism that, whether you call someone old or older or elder or senior, or we're just like whiffing and waffing all over the place because we're not comfortable. We are just not comfortable with what's happening to, with getting older. And so people feel very sensitive to the language around it. Even today, when we started this 30 years ago, it was, what was it, Mary? Seniors.
Oh, which I always thought was ridiculous. I mean, that sounds like high school. Really. But I mean, old is such a great word. It's so strong, So I just think we ought to just throw it around, I was bold.
Yeah, Mary's always like that word.
Yeah, I do.
She likes it. You have to
find
let
out. Thank you for that, Mary. I appreciate that. I do.
I'd like to ask about your wonderful drawing of the bird that comes across the sort of a fantastical crane or heron or stork. It's so wonderful because we are birds of passage. We are all witnessing from this point in our lives what resonates from every stage and chapter we've lived in. And it means more to me, this little bird logo that you have. Ever since about a month ago, I was in my garden, as I always am, and I suddenly heard a sound above that was a new sound. It wasn't geese honking. It was some kind of bugling above me. And I looked up and there was this flurry of black and gray birds and white. And I thought they were sandhill cranes, but I wasn't sure. And so I ended up doing some research and finding the Colorado Crane Coalition and sent them some photographs that I'd taken. And they said, yes, they were lesser sandhill cranes, and they were heading to New Mexico to the Bosque Reserve. And you can see them in Nebraska in March if you want to go there. And so I was thinking, this is amazing. These birds are witnessing us on Earth. And it was like a gift to me. So
I'll tell you what's amazing. There's a Colorado Crane Coalition. That's fabulous.
Yes. There's life in my new home.
Well, I guess the crane was a symbol. It was a symbol of longevity, and what else? What were the other terms that went with it? But that's why we chose it anyway. Yeah.
It's a high flyer. It's an umbrella species, and it needs to be protected. And it's known for it stands for wisdom.
Yeah. That's right.
And its ability to see both heaven and earth.
Oh, right. That's right. That was what we loved so much about it. Yeah.
I want to just thank the entire editorial team for this honor and for inviting me into this circle. And as always, my beloved Kendra, my beloved John, thank you beyond words for everything. And thank you for creating this space for us. I like old too. I love that word. I love the way it feels in my mouth. Old. You know, it's like one syllable, but it's like packed full of life and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, I'll claim old folk, aging folk, being that, and a space for us to come where we can have this conversation where I couldn't, in listening to you all and ingesting and taking in your poems, your words, your lives, your memories, I couldn't have had it anywhere else on the planet today or yesterday or tomorrow. So thank you, Passager people, for creating a space for us to come to connect in this kind of way. You know what I mean?
I want to thank all of the poets who have read today. You've all been wonderful. And not only has this medium of Zoom allowed us to see your faces, but it has meant that I've been able to come into your home or your office for a time and get to feel at home in wherever you are. And that has been a really marvelous experience. And I want to thank Mary and Kendra and Christine again for all that they have done. I'm really very grateful. I think it becomes a bigger thrill every time one gets published. When you become old, and someone was willing to listen to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much.
Well, I like what Martha said. She said, let's call older people passengers from now on. That's what I'm going to do from now on.
That's good, Lynette.
That's right. We'll get it out there.
I can't say passenger anymore. My I've lost the ability in my tongue. I can only say passenger. I will tell you before you go that our next issue is a special issue. It's guest edited by Christine Lincoln, who's an absolutely wonderful writer and poet and former poet laureate in York, Pennsylvania. And she had a vision really to put together an issue on ancestral or generational trauma, and put a call out. That we received many submissions immediately, and from many older people who had never written their story down. And that was a generational thing, interest too. When you think about, Lynette, you're talking about how the culture has changed so much, and things that we would never have talked about are now talked about like they're, like on a family show. I mean, you know what I'm saying, but it was remarkable, what people were sharing. So that issue will be out in February, just to let you know. If no one has anything else they want to say, I want to thank we want to thank all of you. Just absolutely wonderful readers. Oh, that was Mimi. But we want to thank you for your beautiful readings today. Nowhere else was better to be today than right here. And thank you. Congratulations to you all. And we hope to see you again sometime soon.
Yeah.